I was just going over a demo and review of what step 6 was about. And step 7 is implementing set active user, or specifically when we click on a user in the chat list. Right now, it doesn't do anything, but what we want is to actually update which user is active on the left and then change what messages are displayed on the right side. And then we'll come back together in a few minutes.
Why doesn't even sound? It's like the end work. Doesn't have any sounds. No, I think the fan was the thing causing it. So it was just running and breaking. Right now that's broken, you can't do that anymore. But if you ever restart the computer, it gives you a warning, like the fan doesn't work. Oh, it's like made a mode on us right now on the side screen. I just like started coding.
Just to check. Oh. Just to check in, who's still working on this? Okay. In that case, I will move on and match you on my screen. So step 7, implementing set active user. I will go to chatbook. Whoops, office. Oh, wait, before that, I gotta reset. Check out. And then, okay. So instead of console.log, I want to set the active chat to user and no messages at the moment. One thing to keep in mind is that if the currently active user is the same user that I just clicked, I can reduce some of the unnecessary computation that goes on in the background by first checking if the user ID of the user I just clicked and comparing that to see if it's different from the currently active user first. And then changing state from there. I don't think it's the most necessary thing, but just a nice touch. And then the other part to this is updating the chat on the right. So as a hinted at, there is a function here called load message history, which we can consider calling here, but with React, the general practice of keeping modularity between different things. To heed that practice, it would be better to instead update. Where the heck is it? Oh, this use effect hook instead. So right now we're loading the message history just when the page loads, but we can easily change how often this happens just by adding a dependency into the dependency array. And specifically, we can call this function again and load the message history whenever the active chat recipient ID changes. And then there's one more thing, instead of just loading the message history from all chat every time, we can specify which chat to load the message history from. And then from there, I will demo. Okay, so let me log in with Puka Puka. Now, if I hit any of the other active users, oh, something happened. Something that was not supposed to happen happened. Undefined something. Oh wait. Let's see, recipient. Chat recipient ID. Let's try this again. That's crazy. Chat. Okay, actually, I should read this error. Undefined is not an object in chat 35. Oh wait. No, yeah, okay. Wait, okay, so I have this here. So, recipient user. Message is empty. But it's not equal. Okay. I think set active user should be fine. And then I'm updating this active chat recipients. Sorry, figuring something out. It's not ID, right? I don't think it's ID. Yeah, it's not ID. Let's make sure. Wait, I just need something. Good one. Define is not an object. Okay, let me backtrack. So if I undo this, this was all chat. This was empty. I don't think this would have changed anything, so this error should still be here. Chat. Okay, that's correct. So then it's something from step 7.1.
Just open those chat. Just open the chat.
When I try to open another chat, it crashes. Lines on an object. It's client side. It's an issue on the client side. So checkbook. Props that data, messages don't map. So what is map? Data. Oh, messages. Wait. So So messages. So messages is undefined. Which means it's not data that messages are valid. I might just move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nothing broken.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the issue is. It was working like less than 12 hours ago because I ran through this, but what was supposed to happen is that when I clicked on a different chat in the chat list, it would still display messages from all chat. So the left would update, it would show that I'm now chatting with myself, and then my name shows up here where it says all chat, but the messages don't change. And it's just the wrong loaded chat. And that's because we haven't updated the API to return anything besides the messages from all chat. So that's what step 8 is about. Let's just move on from step 7 for now. So I'm going to reset and check out the completion of step 7, and then go to API to make this the change that I mentioned. So right now, the query that is being sent to the database it has all chat as a hard-coded recipient ID, but we want to change this in the event that we're trying to load messages between ourselves and another user. So since this is already in place, the querying for all chat, we can just add a condition where that is true. So if the query has a recipient ID that's equal to all chat, then we actually want this here. And then otherwise, we can change the query to something else. And then later on, when we pass it into this method call, it will have the appropriate information. So I'm going to move the definition of query up here so that I can access it outside of the if-else statement. Okay. So then this else block, I'm setting a query to something different. And here I'm going to use something that's unique to MongoDB. It's going to look like this, the $ followed by 4. And all this means is that I get to list a number of different conditions or things to check for. And any data that matches any of these conditions will be included in what's returned. And so in this case, since we're looking for messages between two individuals, the messages could be sent from person A to person B, or from person B to person A. And so, or rather, instead of persons A and B, the recipient, or sorry, you and then the recipient. So the sender, the first case is this. The sender could be you, and the recipient could be the other person. In which case, we just grab that information from the query. And the other case is where you are, or sorry, the other person is the sender. So get the recipient ID. and you are the recipient. Okay. And so here, just to recap, there's two conditions that we're looking for when we're asking for messages in the chat between two people. One is where it's like from yourself to the person that you're chatting with, and then one for the other direction. And then whichever path that this if else statement takes, query will have a value assigned to it, and then we just pass that into, we just give that to the database as usual. Okay, so then now let's try this again to demo what changed from that. Load the page. Okay. All right. So right now I just hit the chat with myself, and I see some messages. Instead of messages from all chat, it's no longer. I mean, we couldn't see it earlier, but what would have happened was that we just see all this, even when I clicked the conversation with myself. And then I can try it with Puka as well. Or rather, between myself and Puka. Okay, there, submit, and then I can see it here. And if I go to all chat, it's not there. And if I come back, I see it. Okay, but there's actually a small issue here that we haven't quite caught. If someone has open chat, or sorry, if someone has all chat open, and I send a DM to Puka, like, you free tonight? Anyone that has all chat open will actually see my message, and then I'll look kind of sus. But that's not what we want, right? We want our DMs to a particular person to only be received by that person. The issue is in API, specifically. Oh, before I do that, let me reset and check out the next checkpoint. The issue is in API because right now, whenever we get a message, we're just emitting to everybody. We're using the getIO method, which essentially treats whatever message you're trying to send as a shout, and everyone hears it. And so we want to change this so that if the recipient is not all chat, we only want to whisper it to the recipient. And so here we already have something that can handle a shout. So I'll write a condition for that. So if the recipient ID that's passed into the request is all chat, then I'll use what already exists. But otherwise, I want to message just a particular user. And since I'm passing in a user ID in the request, as we can see up here, there's a recipient user object, and then my own user data. I can use get sockets from user ID. So right now, I still want my messages to show up on my screen, right? Maybe not everyone's if it's a DM, but I still want it to show up in mine. And so I will include myself here and emit a message so that it shows up on my screen. So that I receive this message, that is. Okay. So then let's see what that did here. Let's reset this. Log in again. Sign in as myself. Go to chat. All right. So now Puka has all chat open, scrolling down to the bottom, and then I will be messaging Puka. It doesn't seem like Puka is responding, so I'll just bump. And now we can see that all chat no longer sees my messages, which is our desired behavior. But in the other direction, actually, if Puka Puka sends a message to all chat, like hi, even though I don't have all chat open, I will still receive this message. And that's because all chat, as we saw earlier in the code, will end up being a message shouted to everyone who's connected to the server, regardless of which chat that they have open. And so this is something that we actually want to filter on the front end. And to do that, let's see. I'm just going to go to chatbook.js, and where we have a function to add messages that would update our chat, the messages that we see in the chat. I'm going to copy over a long condition, and I'll walk us through it after I copy it in. That will essentially filter out any messages that were not intended for the active recipient or for myself, or at least intended for that conversation. So there's a couple lines I just added here. The first view checks if the active chat, if the person I'm chatting with is actually the recipient of whatever message I received or messages, and I am the sender. The next two lines checks if the person I'm chatting with is the sender and I am the recipient. And then the third, or the last line, checks if the messages were meant for all chat and that I actually have all chat open. If any of these are the case, then we can continue to update what we see on the right side. Otherwise, nothing happens. It might look like a lot. It will be in the next checkpoint if you want to take a longer look at it. We're running a little over, so I'll move on to the demo, but I'll do the same steps as what we saw earlier. Essentially, I have some private message open, and Puka Puka messages all chat. Oh, well, that's crazy. What? Wait, this should be filtered. Oh, wow. Okay, let me try to reset this game. Apologies. Okay, so I'm here, seeing myself, and then Google messages, all chat. Okay, that's unfortunate. We are running into technical difficulties that were not encountered within the recent.
There's some really strange bug. If you just like, it's like I was actually able to run those steps 7, 8, or 9, but if I pull complete and then go back, it like just works.
Do you want to say that? Only then please chat.
It's just the same, right?
Yeah, 9.2.
Wait, where's the book?
Where's
Where's the wrong screen? Display.
Oh, if I message in all chat, I see it in DMs.
Wait, where you on?
I'm on 8, and I just copied it. Man.
Um,
What?
you can do this.
Oh, am I supposed to? Stop it on message. I feel like
Anyways, you combine it with the section below. Like there's a sock, like where's your socket on thing? Yeah,
oh,
this.
this thing.
You have to take this section and you can combine it or like yeah, put it inside the use
Oh, we're
effect.
supposed to update something. Wait, it's where we're
Yeah.
earlier.
Wait, put it no.
Put it here.
Put it at that after this. Yeah. And then you need to trigger on actual chat recipient underscore ID.
So wrap this.
Wait, what? No, you already have the use effect. You just need to put it less negative.
But
Wait, it's just like
I'll just delete these. There's this one right. Oh, okay, put in the wrong place.
so.
Oh, I just put in the wrong. Wait, really? Oh, that's crazy. Wait, you define the ad messages up there, right? So this is ad messages.
Or like, wait, if you have this here,
yeah,
and you don't, or like, you don't need to use the other thing, or like, right, you should keep this,
keep this.
or no. This, wait, scroll up. Scroll up. But this needs to go inside of a use, like this entire function needs to go inside the use effect. Like this function needs to go inside of this.
Okay.
Like with this stuff. Just put it like, yeah, and you can get rid of the socket on inside of here. You don't need that anymore. Or like, you need that one. You don't need the first one.
Oh, yeah.
And then
okay. And then this is okay. Because so that's also not where the to-do was.
oh yeah, they like got combined. I don't know. I like didn't put it in this.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm here. I'll check. So, oh, okay.
It's like it's a pure client side thing.
Okay. Wait, so what was it? What was the difference?
So the thing is this add messages thing.
Yes.
Or the add messages callback, like it's like something on JavaScript, like when you define a callback function, it freezes the value of all variables in that external variables in the callback. So it needs to be put inside of this so it gets regenerated every time this recipient changes. So whenever a recipient changes, you need to regenerate
so that it updates the active chat recipient.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can talk
Oh,
about this if you want.
okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay, this section is pretty confusing. There is a very interesting and kind of hard to see change that you actually have to make. Notably, the add messages callback function that we originally defined elsewhere, we moved inside of this use effect hook. And now you might ask, like, why do we put that inside of the use effect? Because it's just a function, right? The reason why we want to put it inside of use effect is there is an interesting thing in how JavaScript loads callback functions in general. So whenever a callback function is defined, any external variables that it references, like from the component level, are essentially frozen in value in some sense. So it will not like update the value. If you want to use a specific external value, it may not like actually update that value and like use a new value because the function has been defined elsewhere essentially. So the function kind of like writes down what it sees, like when you make it for the first time. And if you use it, it'll just use that same value and it won't like remake the function in a sense. So in order to address that, we actually have to redefine or move this add messages function inside of our use effect hook. So as Jackie has here, this is inside of the use effect hook. And so we just like redefine the function here. So notably at the bottom of the use effect hook, we pass in a active chat.recipient ID or chat.recipient._ID and also props.user ID so that it regenerates this add messages function with updated information whenever we change the recipient ID or the user ID. And so that will allow this callback function to like actually use the most like the actual state of the component instead of just referencing old values. This is a very like hard bug to spot actually, because I mean, it might seem like your code is written normally and it, like in some languages that actually would be, but at least for JavaScript, it does not update that. So you actually have to make sure that you redefine the function itself or like reinitialize the function in a sense. So that is what we just did.
Yeah, and just to demo that with expected behavior, I'm logged into both windows again. On the right, I have a private message open or a private conversation, and then on the left, I have all chat, and then I type in 314. I send some message. It's in all chat, but I no longer see it in my private conversation. Now, the last thing that we need to implement is actually having our DMs show up on whoever we're chatting with their screen. So I'm chatting with Puka Puka right now. Let's say Puka Puka responds with, yeah. I actually don't see this. I think I'm probably still left unread. But we can quickly fix this with another change to API. So this was originally meant for you guys to give it a shot, but in the interest of time, because I've ran into issues, apologies. I'll just handle this on my end, and then you guys can watch on the screen. So in API.js, before that, I gotta check out the next branch. We previously had something in place we wrote just a few steps ago that emits a message to ourselves when we send a DM, and this updates our screen. So we can do the exact same thing, but for the recipient using their ID. And then they would see it. The only caveat to this is that if we're messaging ourselves, because this seems like a feature that's supported in Chatbook, we don't want to see the same message twice. And so just to add a quick filter for that, we just want to make sure that our user ID is not the same as the user ID of whoever we are chatting with. Like that. And then I can demo that real quick. Okay, so then between me and Puka Puka, I don't know, where do you want to go? I hop back to Anna. Sure. All right, and there we have it. We have functional DMs in Chatbook, which we implemented using sockets in a number of different places. If you want to see the end product, you can check out W9 complete. And if you want to look back at any of the code in the intermediate steps, you can check out each of the steps just as we did during this workshop. And that concludes this live coding session. Okay, so just to recap a few things, we can use sockets to shout a message from server to all connected users using socket manager.getIO. And if you wanted to send a message just to one user in particular, we can use get socket manager dot get socket from user ID instead, which will return one particular socket to emit a message to. And as I mentioned earlier, the code that we've given you is in client socket and server socket.js. It has the helper functions for socket manager and everything if you want to look at it. And in practice, the overall idea is adding listeners for specific events, providing callback functions to handle the data whenever those events are received. And then to emit events, you just do .emit for whichever sockets that you want to emit to.